Alright, welcome back everyone. 皆さん、おかえりなさい。今日は100... I was gonna say cent say tenta. 100... うん10日目です。Yeah. Day 170. Today is a special day because it's a Wednesday. Well, Wednesday. It's Wednesday over here, and the WaniKani team last Wednesday, I talked about this a little bit at length. They have mapped out additions and movements for the next 5 Thursdays. So the next 3 Thursdays, including today, or next Wednesday. So those 2 lessons is likely due to either an addition or a movement. So something later in the level track could have been moved into something less than 16, or vocabulary and other elements may have been added. So things are being moved. So we got 2 lessons which weren't there before. That's kind of a fun thing, actually. I like to believe that they continue, where they just do weekly maintenance, which is something that live service things do quite a bit. Have a period of time in the weekly schedule, maybe for an hour to do stuff. And for me, that's kind of cool. It tells me that the developers are actively doing things that may or may not be interesting to the person, right? However, it shows in my opinion, consistent dedication to their products. So that's kind of one of the aspects that I quite enjoy about participating in live service things. I mean, oftentimes when you think of live service stuff, people think about video games, but all the other type of things, they rotate, so it often feels like they are constantly doing that to begin with. So, for example, Netflix, Disney, right? They have to rotate content, so it feels like things are changing. They have to keep trendy, right? The competition saturation is constantly being updated. That's on the content end, and this is still a content end. The back end stuff doesn't have any commentary on, like, it's been a while since a back end thing or like some sort of multiplicative quality of life thing has been introduced in WaniKani. The last one that was mentioned, I was including radical illustrations, right? Or like matriculating the radical illustrations to WaniKani platform from the early Tofugu stuff, right? So this is nice. I quite enjoy this. Again, I echo what I mentioned last week when it comes to how people learn and practice things. There's a double standard when it comes to the mindset of target audience, and typically this, if you're completed WaniKani, for example, got the exposure for level 60, it would be viewed as a content update. Oftentimes, though, when these things become too pervasive in a learning process, or what I have been with the learning process, my impressions with like the kiddos of today, right? The teenagers and young adults of today, when the learning track is modified in any way as you're going, they lose their way. And that losing the way, or feeling like progress has been changed somehow, and forces the person to reevaluate, it's ultimately an incredibly negative experience. Duolingo changing their layout track several years later, right? things like that. This, if it happens too frequently, anyone who's like, I don't know, level in their early process of their learning thing would find that incredibly distressing. And again, intentionally to sound like a broken record, adaptation is not one of the classical skills, which involves critical thinking and problem solving. It's not one of the classical skills that are often emphasized or incentivized. I guess incentivize is a much more trendy word I would use. People are not encouraged or find that adapting and understanding and quantifying in a qualitative way is useful in the modern age. And when I say qualitative, I don't mean quantitative. That's probably a word I haven't used in a very long time, actually. So quantitative is when you're able to statically measure in its entirety, like like quantitative, like there are 2 lessons. I had 0 lessons. 2 is more than 0. What gives, WaniKani? That's quantitative. Qualitative. Oh, actually, that could be viewed as qualitative. But qualitative is more in the idea of what is the general. So you're taking all various quantitative things. At least this is how I'm interpreting it, or I tend to use it. You take various quantitative measures and you calibrate and have a qualitative readout. So you compare them, you compare things that are quantified and look to see how you adjust them, right? It gives that aspect of, in the grand scheme of things, how is your progress if you add 2 more lessons? Are you somehow randomly less proficient than you were yesterday because they decided to change up something or add something or move something? Did you happen to have lost that knowledge somehow because something got moved to a different place? Do you feel something different about you because now you have to learn an extra thing or less of a thing? That's kind of a question that I think comes up far more when it comes to learning than I thought I would be exposed to, considering how rare that I interact with people about learning. Most people are about talking about consuming, not learning, consuming. So lots and lots of practice, little to no learning possible. How is this normalized? Video games. I had a, sorry, this is kind of like taking in personal chat that I was having with one of the goobers. Video games minimize learning, they maximize practice. Practice has, I mean, I do say this, I practice quite a lot. However, my practice tends to be coupled with learning. What I output informs what I seek for new input. But in the world of like the internet, like apps, the less amount of new practice skills, like the fundamental, the less you do about that, the more likely the person becomes consistent. I'm not saying, and also I'm not saying this is a human thing, like everyone experiences. I'm talking about the generalized behavior when you're designing a product. So for WaniKani, that to me creates that consequence that WaniKani does not make quality of life changes, nor are they incentivized to do so. And also, there's diminished return and scaling issues when it comes to reception and feedback for back-end changes. So if they decided to add, for example, a double check as a feature, That is diminished return. When you leave a product in its foundational balance and you choose not to change it and add more content, right? This is sort of that. It is largely seen as content, so it's okay, right? There is some stigma on changing up the volume when someone has already passed a certain level, right? That's like retroactive changes. Like in a video game, you play through a video game and suddenly the developer says, oh yeah, we're gonna change the first beginning of the levels. Now the experience is different. So when someone plays the video game and they want to relate experiences to other people, it's like, oh, that's before this patch. Like it was harder back then, or it was easier back then. And then that creates that emotional strife, right? Well, if it was easier back then, play the game again, right? But you can't take it back, because if you do it retroactively, you already have your current experience, right? So when you play through a game, like say you play through chapter 1 of a 3-chapter game, and then they retroactively change something about chapter 1 that makes it quote unquote easier, or intended to be easier. And then when someone asks you, oh hey, I see you got to chapter 1, how's your experience? And then the person would be inclined to say, well, my experience was before the patch, so it was harder, in order to like accommodate their competence. So then the other person is like, oh, okay, I see. Why don't you just play the game again? But when you play through it again, you can't tell the difference between whether it is easier because of the patch, a lot of times, or that you're more experienced. And in my opinion, goes back to a little bit of now what I'm going to say here. You always, like, when you view knowledge and learning, you're moving forward. You rarely go backwards. So when I see, like, I love the game Clair Obscure, and they've changed a bit of how to like challenge modifiers and whatnot, and I want to go back to play those games. But those challenge modifiers will forever be different, because I can't just unlearn playing the game a certain way, right? So what happens is those challenge modifiers are a different way to it's a way to expand my experience, not to produce a retroactive alteration. So this is how I feel about this WaniKani thing. This is extra lessons. It's more content. Awesome. Right? Regardless, and hear me out, this is going to be very divisive when it comes to language learning, because there are people who truly and utterly believe that there is a fixed order of acquiring a language, and hats off to them for trying to present that theory, right? For myself, if I like Japanese, at some point I would come across them, whether they're retained or not. That's fair. And then if you're in a hurry and you want to, like, what's a very popular way, pull up the 2000 most frequently used, words or kanji, and you prioritize them, that's great. For me, the journey is going to cover, if not most of these things. So if and when I encounter them, that's perfectly fine for myself, because whatever I encounter, I'm going to try to use it. Much like the last couple of days I was talking about, when I learn something, I try to use it, and then I find out if I want to continue using it. And if I don't, then ultimately even getting them wrong on WaniKani is not going to faze me emotionally, largely because I understand that this is the summation of all of the things they think they want to include, instead of sitting there in the corner keyboard warrioring why you shouldn't include things you don't want to use. That's fair enough for you. Now, could they add, or would they add a feature that allows you to skip certain curriculums and stuff? That is their prerogative, right? There are two sides of the coin, at least two sides of this same coin. Is the idea that, do you want to prescribe a body of things that normalizes everyone's experience on content? If you do so, over time, there's consistency in opinions. If you choose to offer lots of flexibility, lots of feature sets, it also welcomes division and diversity. And I compared contrast between multiculturalism and monoculturalism. So to me, WaniKani's content team, as a reflection of WaniKani's team, they're doing minimally to affect how one interacts with their product, so that the responsibility of affecting the experience is minimized, and then providing content. That's kind of one of the sweet spots of live service. Every once in a blue moon, a live service will change up something. But generally speaking, overall, it takes a very long time to adapt to the even subtle differences, and it's generally incredibly negative at first until it's held consistent for a bit, because I don't think it's a social norm for people to do things, to start new things and learn new things on a daily basis. What can I say about that? I think I'm a person who disagrees with that. And it is very telling, because whenever I open my mouth, I tend not to say that because I like to sound appropriate. Like, for example, when someone says, "Oh man, everything is boring," well, that's because you don't like to start and be interested in new things. Like, that would sound very unsympathetic and possibly one of those like tough love situations. If I'm not like tough love kind of person, I would prefer to show what I like, demonstrate how I engage with the things, and then if that interests them because they know me, they would be voluntarily choosing to participate. So I want to show and highlight all the things that WaniKani team does, and if that interests someone, I'm trying to show to the best of ability of how I interact with something, right? I do not like tell people that this is good for them. I try to show, right? And this is definitely one of them. This type of point, how you feel about these changes is a great way to inform how you want to move on in the future about the products you engage in. For me, a year's time sounds like a very long time, and also at the same time, all these changes, they can change it up every single day if they want it. They can willy-nilly flip levels. Heck, they could make the whole thing random if they want. I'd be fine with that, right? Because it's a new thing every day. Your habits are different, the rules are different. I mean, if they want, they can change up how the flashcards are done every single day, and I'd be okay with it. As in, for example, one day it's gonna be WaniKani. Then one day it's gonna be Kaniwani. Then one day they're just not flashcards at all. Be dynamic about it. That's perfectly fine. But I think that would be incredibly disruptive to the social norm or the behavioral aspect of the majority of people who use online. They believe in consistency in consumption. Now, when it comes to habit formation and how to maintain a habit, that is actually ironically inconsistent to provide consistency. So, when I speak about habit formation, in order to maintain a habit, one has to slowly, constantly adjust to something that is changing. A habit becomes duller, it becomes more repetitious. You will start to lose enthusiasm progressively. So those are like slow, unnoticeable, but requires a lot of due diligence for those changes. So that plays against someone who likes to do the same thing as consistently as possible. So I know how this is going to sound, but I'm one of those kind of guys that like their games to have random diff spikes everywhere and random ease spikes everywhere, because you're always on your toes. If it's like consistently smooth across the board, I think that's what people like, or like conditioned to enjoy, right? Puzzle games, right? When you think about puzzle games, the puzzle games diff spikes, puzzle games way of doing things are like this. The reason why there's a steady over time curve down is because your learning curve is overall unified by a theme. So then it gives you that semblance of progressive, but there are peaks. There are spikes at every new rule, right? And that's kind of like the blend of this. In WaniKani, the spike is, if there's anything about the fundamentals of WaniKani, the spike is only at the beginning. And then the rest are like little tiny little spikes. Because the fundamentals of WaniKani's use case is not changing. But it's still going down because your overall competence, oftentimes there's intuition to connect dots of that spike. And then those little tiny spikes are whenever you're learning, whenever you get a lesson. Right? And it just keeps going down. But a puzzle game, it can be very, very harsh to the point that it feels like you did something, right, in level 1 through 10, and then suddenly they're like, we're gonna remove level 1 through 10, or maybe even entirely add a new mechanic from level 10 through 20. One of the criticisms for like Portal, for example, one of the funny criticisms for the Portal games, like especially Portal 2, is that each quote-unquote room requires a different mindset, requires a different solution flow. That's a great example of why puzzle games, you can like a game for one of its rooms, and then you can dislike the game exactly for the other room, right? Because it's not seen as connected. And for me, WaniKani is not dynamic, so I make it as dynamic. Like, I don't engage with WaniKani by doing the lessons as quickly as possible and gathering whatever you need in order to remember the output, and that I don't think that's enough. SRS is, if there's anything I would say, it's impressive. It's very impressive that a lot of people use SRS for so long without developing or increasing the dynamic of the way you interact with it on an SRS. Like, when someone says they grind Anki for 3 years, that's incredibly impressive. And when I hear them say they grind Anki for 3 years, my immediate thought is the likelihood is they rarely have changed up their way of interacting with Anki over those 3 years. If I use something, I would say I have used Anki for 3 years, because it wouldn't feel like a grind to me if I voluntarily use something for over those 3 years. I no longer use that tool the same way anymore. Like, it would be more than that tool, despite if there's literal changes or not. I deliberately change the experience as well. and it's going to happen it's actually happening in 100-day periods. It's about to change up again in less than 100-day periods, really. It's going to change up in a week from now, the way I interact with money and the stuff that I talk about as well. And this stuff is cool. I love this stuff. So kudos to the WaniKani team. I understand that these things are minimal changes, and personally I think that's a great way to go about it. Slow, gradual changes. If WaniKani was most like a young product, you know, like a year in its infancy, I would welcome and encourage the developers to change it up like dramatically, keep throwing. But this is an old product, over 11 years old. It's already matured into its state. So naturally, embracing human condition, those who use this, if they dramatically change some element of how you interact, those who have formed habits will ultimately be negative at first, and then you lose all those people who do not want to adapt to the new routine, and then those who stay are even stronger than they were, right? How have you, it's kind of like having a habit. You're like, I want to improve my sleep hygiene. It's incredibly tough at first, and then eventually it wanes and it transforms into something that is beyond what it was before. I think SRS has gotten to the point, especially for language learning, that it follows similarly to the idea of like dieting, especially fitness, like a fitness. It's interesting. I'm excited. Now I look forward to next Wednesday, because next Wednesday, I don't know. I didn't look very carefully if it's going to impact me. I kind of thought this Wednesday wasn't good. But here we are. All right, let's hop in. All right, there's a little bit of a little digression here. I think yesterday was fine. Yeah. And then this is the if you blink day, but I decided to embellish. Oh, angle. Oh, so they retroactively add angle early. That's fine. Because we already have angle. All right, we're moving along. North exit. Did we not have north exit? I guess we didn't. We had east, south. Do we have west? I think we have west. So somehow north was. Oh, maybe because this character. It's weird. Okay. So remember how iriguchi means daguchi means exit. This same deal. This might have been moved from a later thing. Just maybe because north is used for other vocabulary earlier. So I guess
Kitaguchi.
Alright, and that's it. Oops. Corner is that.
Kitaguchi.
Oh, north exit. And we're done. Nope. That's what happens. Alright, let's do our 5 review.
Ichigo. Kyoukai.
Oh, wait.
Kyōryoku. Katai.
And that's it. We're done for today. I know, I spent more time yapping away. How I feel these out. Take the opportunity. Throw in some language related anecdotes. Right? Good. Through here, and then we're moving right along. I do have to rest more for tomorrow. Level up days are pretty stressful. Positive stress, right? It takes up a lot of energy. Okay, attach, valley, face, drone, zombie. Okay. And yo, and why did I write K for and mon mon ke in su u o yu in ako ni men en u ji chi yoku wara e i an den de yu ru yo en i son son en to yo i han. That's it. That's all we have for today. That's a wrap for WaniKani today. Watch this later. Arigatou gozaimasu. Um, yeah. Feel free to follow along, right? Pick up WaniKani for yourself. Writing times, updates. I'd love to see more and more updates. We'll see if this is a start of a new thing or maybe an old thing. Who knows? I like that they're posting content updates on a monthly. Like it's actually like a roadmap. They last Wednesday they posted what they're gonna do for the next 5 Wednesdays. In terms of the content thing, it takes us up to July something, like 14th or something. Right. That also means that there might not be a chance or opportunity for additional things to happen in between. I hope they still do. I like that they're continuing, and that might be fingers crossed for a lot of people's desire, which is to expand WaniKani beyond level 60, right? Because as far as I remember, it does not cover all of N1 kanjis. So there's about like 240 kanji left. Uh, if realistically to me, most of the time, or 90% of my next 4 or 5 years is probably just going to be N5 to N3 kanji and then expanding my vocabulary with them. But it's cool. And then, occasionally N kanji floats around somewhere. But generally speaking, that's more of a realistic take on things. It's nice to get an exposure to them and see what they're like. So missing 240 or so kanji, that's kind of more of a emotional completionist situation, being unsatisfactory that a product is not comprehensive, right? Although, genuinely speaking, thinking that a product is comprehensive when dealing with a natural language, which is a living thing, right? Is figurative living. I like thinking a live service should be comprehensive, like a model that adapts to subscription would be a comprehensive. I mean, even the idea of a lifetime subscription, not comprehensive. Whatever gets done in that time. Maybe perhaps that's a rhetoric. I would love to hear what other people's opinions and stories are when they relate to live service products and or habit formation. Right. Okay. I'm gonna get up, take a quick bathroom break, and I'll be back. Thank you.